So to wrap up our conversation about multiplying polynomials, I want to take a minute to talk about something called the FOIL method. Right? You may have heard of this in an earlier algebra class. It's a method for multiplying two binomials together. Right? Remember, binomial is a polynomial with two terms. We're talking about something like x plus 1 times x plus 3, for example. And this FOIL acronym, it stands for first, outer, inner, last. That's a reminder of the parts that you're supposed to multiply together to get the final answer. Right, so let's see how this works. Right, so I've got an example here for us, x plus 3 times x minus 1, and I want to multiply these together. So what this acronym is telling us to do is to start by multiplying the first terms. That's the x and the x. So x times x is x squared. Then do the outer terms, right? The outer terms are x and negative 1, so that gives me negative x. Then do the inner terms, that's the 3 and the x, so that gives me 3x. And finally, we do the last terms, that's the 3 and the negative 1, that gives me negative 3. Then to get my final answer, I just combine all of these together. It's x squared minus x plus 3x minus 3. Got some like terms, right? And we always have to stop and look for that before we think we're done. I can combine these two x terms together. And my final answer is x squared plus 2x minus 3. So I've got another example for us to look at here, and I wanted to do a second one just so you can kind of see how this is done in class, right? But by the time you get to doing this in class, you're not going to write out, your instructor, your professor isn't going to write out first, outer, inner, last. You're just going to kind of do each piece. I mean, I would stand up on the board and say, okay, the first parts, that's x squared times 3x, that's 3x cubed. The outer parts are x squared and minus 4, so that's minus 4x squared. The inner parts are minus 2x times 3x, so that's minus 6x squared. And the last parts are minus 2x times minus 4, which is plus 8x. Then you combine the like terms, right? These two in the middle. This gives me 3x cubed minus 10x squared plus 8x. That's our final answer. That's kind of how you would see this done, right? How your professor, your teacher is probably going to do this when they're standing up on the board showing an example in class. So if I'm being honest about it, I'm not a big fan of the FOIL method. Now, I'll admit, I refer to it in class. Everybody seems to know it, especially by the time they get up to, my freshman level college classes. The reason I'm not a fan of it is that it's a very limited use tool. You can use it to multiply two binomials together, and that's it. If you had something with three terms, like a plus b plus 1 times a plus b, then you'd be out of luck. You'd have to go and use one of the other methods that we've talked about. And what, to me, kind of makes those methods preferable is that they always work. They work for any two polynomials, regardless of their size. Right? And, I'm just not a big fan of this kind of special use tool. Right? So, however, it does get talked about, so I didn't want to talk about it here just to make sure everybody's kind of aware of it. So, looking ahead, we've talked so far about addition, subtraction, and multiplication of polynomials. So the next lecture, we can kind of take the obvious next step, talk about the last arithmetic operation on our list, and think a little bit about how to divide polynomials.